Have you heard of the Narcissist Prayer?
What's that?
The Narcissist's Prayer?
Narcissist Prayer? No, I haven't heard of that.
Oh, it's a really beautiful piece of writing by an unknown author, and I find it so relatable in terms of the journey that family violence researchers such as yourself have been down in terms of the way in which society diminishes violence by women. I'm going to read the Narcissist Prayer to you, and I want to see how you feel about it. That didn't happen. And if it did, it wasn't that bad. And if it was, that's not a big deal. And if it is, it's not my fault. And if
Yeah,
it was, I didn't mean it. And if I did, you deserved it.
that's great. I love that one. I love
It's,
that one. You must send
it's,
that to me. I love
I
that one.
will, yeah. It's like the 50 years of family violence research. I want
Yeah,
to go through it line by line, but
yeah,
that didn't happen. That's obviously people denying the prevalence of female violence,
yeah,
which, as we've talked about already, is very high and equal to men's.
yeah.
But that didn't happen. And if it did, it wasn't that bad, which sort of suggests that violence by women is, less severe. It's not motivated by so-called power and control. It's not the same.
Right.
But what do you think that's true? Like, is violence by women less severe than violence by men?
Well, here's what the data say. When John Archer did his initial survey, he found that he looked at injuries, and he found that women were injured more, but it was only 1/6 of a standard deviation more,
Mm,
which is means if you put the distributions of injuries for men and women uh, over each other, there's a lot of overlap between those two distributions. Now, I've got a colleague that I'm working with now, Chris Genkus, who's in Houston, Texas, and he's doing a study of injury rates in the U.S. Yeah, women get injured more, but it's not so black and white as feminism would paint it. I mean, men get injured a lot too because women can pick up boiling water or a knife or
mm,
all kinds of things, and it's injury. It doesn't just depend on who's bigger; it depends on who's more motivated and angrier.
mm.
And will grab a weapon around. So there's a whole lot of things that are going on. I mean, there's more overlap than people think. And Ann Coker years ago did a long study on, did a very comprehensive study on long-term psychological effects of being a victim of abuse, and found that they were virtually identical for men and women. Depression and anxiety persisted for a long period of time, and men were just as susceptible to it as women were. Then Denise Hines in the U.S. is doing some really valuable work now on effects on battered men, abused men. And she's really the first person to come along and pick it up and do it. And she's doing some really good work on it.
Yeah, well, that was the next one, isn't it? I mean, and if it was that bad, it's not a big deal, which I guess
Yeah.
suggests that it doesn't impact men as badly. Maybe it is as bad, but it's just the impacts are not so bad. So that doesn't sound to be true.
Well, when I used to teach my undergraduate classes about domestic violence, and I would wind up with 3 case studies, and I lifted them all in one day off the pages of the LA Times. And there were 3 horrific abuse cases. One woman broke the guy's testicles. I mean, just horrible abuse. And I didn't make these up. These are just 3 that came today from the LA Times. Just horrific stuff. I mean, yes, to not acknowledge that what's going on for abuse victimization for men is a societal problem that just really cuts across a number of countries.
Well, then I guess people talk a lot about so-called context of domestic violence, which is another way in which people try to diminish abuse against men, where it's not motivated by the same thing. It's not a woman trying to use power and control. It's not part of a pattern of
I know
behavior. But
they assume what the social context is. I mean, Tatiana Rezan and I did a review of all the studies that had ever been done that asked perpetrators why they did of abuse, why they did what they did. And no one ever mentioned any socio-political issues at all. Never. Out of 1,600 people across all these studies, they mentioned things like, "Oh, I was angry," or "I wanted to get his attention."
mm,
They all these sort of petty psychological things were the issues that prompted the abuse, not, "Well, she's a woman and I need to put her in her place." That didn't happen. Only 2% of men in North America believe it's okay to hit a woman to put her in her place. I mean, these socio-political things just do not happen the way the politicians think they do.
well, that's what I mean. Like they talk a lot about instrumental violence, where it's not just the violence itself; it's part of a wider set of motives from the patriarchy.
Yeah, but and they talk about the theory, but I mean, the evidence doesn't support that. I mean, it's not instrumental violence. I mean, there's numerous studies that show that domestic violence is generated by emotions out of control. Someone getting too angry and too upset and too whatever, and they do something they hadn't done before. And when I did the treatment groups for men, it's not that they came in there and said, "Well, she had it coming," or I had to keep her in place. They had the same attitudes as most other men. It's not okay to hit a woman, but I don't know why I did what I did. They were upset by the fact that they'd acted this way, and they didn't fully understand it. Not that they felt it was okay. Some people will try to rationalize it after the act, say, "Well, it wasn't that severe," or whatever, but by and large, it's just an emotion that's run its course, got out of control, and the violence was the upshot of that, and the opposite of being instrumental violence, which is to maintain a patriarchy. Let me say one thing about the patriarchy. I mean, yes, I get that women had a glass ceiling, in places of work for a long time, and that's finally subsiding. That's a good thing, but I looked at the 1975 survey that was done in the U.S. About domestic violence, and they also asked questions about power. And they asked this question about who gets the final say on six major decisions in the family. And so, you got to measure patriarchy here. So here's what the data said: 9.4% said the man got the final say on this major decisions. 7.5% said the woman got final say. The rest all said, "Well, we divided equally or we talked about it." So, like, something like 84% were equalitarian in 1975, before any of this
Mm.
stuff blew up and all the feminism was written in the 80s. Families were not patriarchal even in 1975.
So even in the heyday of the patriarchy,
Yeah,
84% was,
yeah,
egalitarian, which is good news.
yeah,
That's great. Like, why can't, like, it's almost like we want to paint this very
yeah,
sensational, terrifying image of society
yeah,
to get more funding, I suppose, but, it's it's kinda sad. But
yeah.
moving down the Narcissist Prayer, it
You gotta send
that's
that to me. I like that
oh,
one.
it's perfect. That's not a big deal, and if it was, it's not my fault. So it's not
Right,
my fault, it's self-defense. But
right.
what have you, I mean, I'm gonna read your own research back to you, but you did a study with, Raison in
Yeah,
2019.
raison, yeah,
Raison, reviewed all studies of intimate partner violence perpetration with a collective sample of 16,500 people, which is
right,
an enormous sample. Both male and females described their motives in terms of anger and gaining attention.
right,
Self-defense was the least endorsed and seventh most cited motive.
right.
So it's not self-defense.
No, self-defense is way down. It was the least cited motive.
Some of it's
Least,
self-defense.
yeah.
Like, what percentage of female perpetrated violence would you say is self-defense?
Well, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but if it's the seventh most cited motive, it's way down there. No, I mean, the overwhelming majority, it's anger, upset, trying to get somebody's attention. It's just we're just listening here to what the people themselves tell us about why they did what they did, rather than some academic theory made up by somebody sitting in a sociology department who thinks they know how the world ticks.
Mm. One of the things I find interesting about domestic violence being the so-called patriarchy is that as you enter lower socioeconomic groups, domestic violence goes up,
Yeah,
which is the opposite. Like, these are some of the least powerful men in
yeah.
society, and yet they have the high. So you would have thought it would be the opposite. And then moving down, finally, it's not my fault, and if it was, I didn't mean it, and if I did, you deserved it, which I think means the whole normalization of violence against men. Like, do you think we normalize violence against men?
I don't know about normalized. I think it's dismissed as being not serious. I mean, that's the main thing. That's why I think the study we're doing on injuries right now is kind of good. When I wrote Rethinking Domestic Violence in 2006, I was I was aware of two studies we've done in Canada on injuries to women, and they went to hospital emergency wards. One was done in Vancouver, one was done in Kingston, Ontario. And they asked women in the emergency ward, "How did you come by these injuries?" And they were looking for a high percentage of domestic violence injuries. They didn't find them in either case, and these studies got file drawered. They just got filed away and never referred to. I only was able to find one study that asked these questions about male injuries, and that was done in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And it's something like 30% of men in the emergency ward were there because of domestic violence and injuries. And the researchers said it would have been higher, but we had to shut the study down at midnight because we we didn't have a second team to take in the late night calls. So one study, and it, as I say, John Archer found a minor, a 1/6 of a standard deviation. That's maybe 15%. Is the difference in injuries to women and injuries to men. I mean, the stereotype is, well, men are bigger and stronger, and therefore the woman's going to get injured more. That's only one small part of the entire equation. In terms of motivation and other things that go on. And the evidence says it's 1/6 of a standard deviation. So you've got victims on both sides, and we should be paying attention to victims on both sides.